Hey everybody on Facebook Live, it's time again for the PRWeek podcast, and we have a terrific guest this week with Maher Nasser, who is the Commissioner General for Expo 2020 and Director of Outreach Division at the UN. Maher, welcome.
Thank you.
And Diana Bradley is here as our co-host. She'll be bringing us up to speed on all of the biggest news from here and from Cannes this week, so we will start recording as soon as Sean behind the dials is ready. We're good to go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PR Week. That's PR Week's weekly edition of everything going on in the worlds of PR and communications. I am your guest host this week, Frank Washkuch, and I am taking over the podcast today for Steve Barrett, who, of course, is in Cannes this week. I have a terrific guest for you in Maher Nasser, the Commissioner General for Expo 2020 at the United Nations and the Director of Outreach Division there. How are you today?
Very well, thank you.
Good. And I also have Diana Bradley, as always, who will be bringing us up to speed on the news of the week from Cannes and from back home as well. Diana, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
So, Maher, I have to tell you, we don't get a lot of Commissioner Generals on the podcast, and that's one of the cooler titles of somebody we've had on recently. So tell us what that means. What do you do?
The Commissioner General basically is the person who will coordinate the United Nations presence at Expo 2020 in Dubai next year. Mm-hmm. So that entails a lot of coordination with the UN system as a whole, plus also making decisions on the content that we will have in the pavilion and how we're going to celebrate International Days and bringing what the UN does for people to the visitors of Expo and beyond. Because, of course, there's digital and social media assets that will be developed that will help tell the story. Now, my other job, which is my day-to-day job, is of course telling what the UN does to the world through engaging with partners other than media. Of course, as a Department of Global Communications, our number one interaction is with the media, with journalists, where we facilitate their coverage of the organization, their access to diplomats, their access to meetings, plus summaries and so on. But my job is a little bit different. We want to go beyond the building. So if 20th century media meant that you waited for the journalists to come to you, you tell them the story, and then they tell the world, I think 21st century communication is about us creating the content for people to find everywhere. And that is helped by civil media, the social media. It's also helped with the advertising. I mean, Cannes, Lions, I have a colleague, many colleagues now from the UN at Cannes working with advertising with the creatives to ensure also that the stories that are being told include what the UN is doing. And it's not about the institution, it's about the change and the impact we have on people's lives.
Mm-hmm. So we're all a little envious of people at Cannes this week, I think, everybody here. But what kind of content are you developing when you talk about telling this in sort of an untraditional way? What are you focused on?
I'll give you a few examples from our most recent collaboration. In 2015, world leaders at the UN agreed an agenda for 2030 to change the world. Right. Agenda to create a world where there's no poverty, there's no hunger. Sustainability is our main driver, so that while we create prosperity for people, we don't forget about the planet, and we don't damage the climate beyond repair. So that agenda has captured the world's imagination. And we have been approached by people in the entertainment industry and others to say, how can we work with you to translate this language? In the work we do at the UN, we have 6 official languages. So people tell me, okay, member states expect what we do in English to translate to French, Spanish, Chinese, Arabic, and Russian. And I tell them we have to have another element of translation. We have to translate our language, which I call UNese, into everyday speak, and to be able to reach different audiences. So last year we worked with Mattel. Mattel owns Thomas the Tank Engine, the little blue train that lives on the island of Sodor. So they were relaunching the series in 2018, and they wanted to incorporate the SDGs into the new series. So with the help of experts we worked with from the UN Environment Program, UN Women's Program, UNICEF, and a couple of other UN agencies, we worked with the writers to incorporate those issues of climate change, issues of environmental sustainability, issues of women's gender equality into the series in a way that actually can be understood and 3 to 5 year olds can relate to it. They work with us to develop content for the caregivers, for the teachers. So that would be probably my our youngest audience that we have worked with to collaborate. We are now working with Sony Entertainment on how the Angry Birds, we had a collaboration with them during the first film, and the Angry Birds supporting actually Red was appointed a one-day honorary ambassador for Green, and the campaign was Angry Birds are angry, and we have to make them less angry by helping save the environment and climate change. So,
That's terrific, yeah.
So these are the kinds of collaborations that are beyond the normal box that you think the UN is just working with journalists. No, we want to go beyond that, and we want to work more than just goodwill ambassadors, messengers of peace. That's another aspect that I also work with. But I think we have to reach the people through the programs and through the platforms that they are in.
And then do you take these things that you create, these partnerships, and do you translate them from there? Or I guess my question is, what markets do you focus on? I mean, is there a way you prioritize?
Our market is the world. So whenever we engage in this kind of partnership, and let me also clarify, we don't have many resources. So, and this is what the value and great partners that we've had so far, they have all agreed that in the different markets around the world, that what we create together in English, they will also provide the translations. So Thomas the Tank Engine is in dozens of countries, and they've worked with us to create the content in the different languages. And we're doing the same with the Angry Birds. We did the same with the Smurfs. So we're working in Japan with Hello Kitty, the YouTuber. So again, Hello Kitty is promoting the Sustainable Development Goals.
So Expo 2020 sounds like a gigantic job that you're preparing for next year. It's in Dubai, but are you doing things locally as well?
In Dubai?
Well, around the world, as it happens in Dubai.
As it happens in Dubai, I think what we're doing now is preparing for the content, and we're mindful of 25 million people are expected to visit Dubai for the Expo. And if we attract 10% of that to our pavilion, there are also best practices that are being promoted from all over the world, best practices to promote the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, the global goals. So therefore, what we're going to do is actually try to find ways where people who do not have the ability to be in Dubai during that 6-month period, they can actually see what we're doing there digitally through virtual means. And maybe when we have international days marked in Dubai, how can we carry those activities all over the world and amplify them?
And I'm guessing that also includes a lot of traditional media relations and things of that nature. Can you tell us about that?
Definitely. I mean, when we talk about that we have to think about social media, that doesn't mean that we can ignore traditional media, because the United Nations is, of course, an organization of member states, and and the activities are mostly political. So media and serious media is very interested in that. So we have to cater for that as well. So we work with traditional media. We produce content that is also picked up by television networks. Access all meetings that take place at the UN today are actually covered and webcast live. So you can log in any time of the day, and if there's a meeting going on and it's an open meeting, you can actually watch it.
Very interesting stuff. So tell us a little bit about your day job, if that's not enough. What do you do on a day-to-day basis in terms of being the director of the outreach division? What does that entail?
I mean, there are a lot of meetings. We have a lot of meetings, unfortunately, but that's part of the job, because when you have a team of about 200 people, I mean, there are different units. We have a weekly coordination meeting, but also I coordinate with other parts of my department, with other parts of the UN, to get to speed. What are the issues of today? So what is going to be at the noon briefing, where the spokesperson of the Secretary General going to be facing the journalists? What are these issues, and how can we feed into that? What events and activities I am organizing so that he can mention or be aware of them if asked? A ton of emails. I think on average.
What is your travel schedule like? I'm dying to know.
Every maybe 2-3 months I travel maybe once, sometimes more. In April I was in Japan. I was also in Dubai. I have not been anywhere in May, in June also, but sometimes I get 2 to 3 trips a month, and sometimes 3-4 months with no travel.
What are you focused most of your time on? I mean, is it dealing with the media? Is it internal communications? Is it communicating in different regions or different countries? Where do you focus your time for the most part?
My job does not deal directly with the media. we have other parts of the department, but of course we are all part of the same department. So internal communications is part of my job, and I think we have a platform which is like the intranet for the organization. When I took the job 8 years ago, it was only accessible if you were in New York as a staff member of the United Nations.
Yeah.
Today, we have changed the platform, we have improved it. First of all, wherever you are in the world, you can access this platform through your phone, through your computer, if you have a UN email address. It is also more interactive. It used to be one way. We write stories, people read them, and there's no way for you to react to that story. We have gone a bit further. We know that anything that is interactive will invite actually more participation. So you can comment on the stories, you can like the stories. Of course, everything is not as interactive as social media is, but it is a step way removed from where we started a few years ago. Internal communications, I think many organizations fail to recognize the importance of internal communications. Our best messenger is our staff. And in this today's climate, when there is a crisis of trust, as Secretary General Antonio Guterres said, trust in organizations, trust in governments, trust in leadership is currently out there. And how do we improve that? By actually facilitating that the best messenger for you is your staff. When your staff are talking proudly about the work they do, and we remind people who work at the UN that the UN is not the building in New York only. The United Nations provides food aid to 80 million people around the world from the World Food Programme every year. Today is World Refugee Day. The UN High Commission for Refugees today marks the International World Refugee Day, announced that there are 70.8 million displaced people on the planet today, including over 23 million refugees. That is the highest number ever. That's almost 1 in 108 people. And that number is 20 times more than it was, it's 2 times what it was 20 years ago. So those refugees, those displaced people are assisted and supported by the United Nations. 45% of the children in the world receive their vaccinations that actually have contributed to improved life expectancy and child mortality. To 45% is provided by UNICEF through partners. And so on and so forth. So when I tell a new recruit, you're not an accountant, you're not an editor, you're not a lawyer. You are part of this organization that is actually doing all of this and more to ensure that what we saw 74 years ago in Europe, the Second World War and other parts of the world does not happen again. That is what keeps me going. And I think what I tell young people joining the UN, you are part of this.
Yeah. That's really interesting. So there's so much buzz right now about this concept of nationalism versus globalism and things of that nature. What does that mean for a job like yours? Do you have to go out and tell the UN story more aggressively than you did before?
And I think the Secretary General has been basically focusing on explaining, and the reality is the problems that we are facing today, take it climate change, the uncertainty, anxiety from new technologies and the AI, cyber, and all of that, to the concerns that we hear about migration and the large population growth, to global terrorism, organized crime, all of these problems, no country can deal with on its own. So actually, if you just put the questions and ask people, these are the problems, how do you think we can approach them? Building walls will not solve it. We have to collaborate. We have to work together to be able to address those concerns. And I think this is the essence of what multilateralism is. People might be, anything ending with an ism is difficult to get, but it's actually about very simple. We have global problems. We can only confront them and deal with them by working together. And much has been achieved. If you look at the statistics, we have the highest living expectation today in humanity's history. We have the lowest numbers of people dying from conflict, the lowest numbers of people dying from disease, the highest percentage of children living beyond 5. I mean, on all scales, economic development, etc., etc. We have achieved a lot. Number of conflicts are less than they used to be. We have not had a third world war, thank God. There are internal conflicts. There are more challenges. But I think the only thing that got us to where we are is working together. And I think that's the main message, is patriotism. Nobody's saying you shouldn't love your country. But I think the interests of your country and your people is by working with other people, because that's what got us to where we are. Not war, not conflict.
Really interesting. You mentioned the term UNEs before.
Yes.
What's an example of UNEs?
Let me. The theme that member states adopted in a resolution last week to mark the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, which is next year, is the following: the future we want, the UN we need, reaffirming our collective commitment to multilateralism. So that, I think, is UNEs. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are other examples. Of course, this is a theme is supposed to be short and punchy. This is very substantive, but I think for us to be able to translate to teenagers, to other younger audiences, we have to find ways of making that connection between this very sober and very serious theme that we all believe in, that people can buy into it. And when you read documents, like a report that is 30 pages long, or a resolution which starts with reaffirming and mindful of and recalling, and of course, that gets repetitive a little bit. Of course, it's necessary. Like in a legal document, when I sign a lease in New York, it's usually 40 pages. I mean, why do I need 40 pages? But you have to.
Of course.
You go over that. So that's
40 if you're lucky sometimes.
If you're lucky. So that's an example of UNEs.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Really, really interesting interview. Thanks again for coming on. So I want to turn it over to Diana now for the news of the week, which of course starts with Cannes. And tell us about a few standout campaigns that have...
You've actually messed up my segue.
Okay, excuse me. Well,
the Wendys segue.
Well, that's going to be one of the standout things at Cannes. See, I saved the segue.
Oh, okay.
See, we hold each other accountable here, what we're doing. Go ahead, Diana. Tell us about that.
The Wendys CMO?
Sure.
Shall I start with that? Okay. So this was a very fast food news heavy week.
It really
actually. Wendy's has promoted Carl Loretto to U.S. CMO, and he reports to Wendy's U.S. President and Chief Commercial Officer Kurt Kane, and he will obviously be responsible for all North America marketing efforts for the brand. And Kane actually just moved into his current role in May. Mm-hmm. Before that, he was Wendy's EVP and Chief Concept and Marketing Officer. So Laredo might have now taken over some of those responsibilities. That's to be confirmed. Mm-hmm. Laredo has been at Wendy's since 2016 on the marketing team. He was VP of Brand Marketing. And in 2017, he took over the brand's creative development and advertising, media buying, and social programming responsibilities.
So was there any sense that this appointment happened before or after the Cannes Lions?
I am not.
We're not totally sure. Because they had an excellent showing over there, and so did Ketchum, their agency partner, and a lot of it was the Keeping Fortnite Fresh campaign, which is really interesting.
That was extremely creative, that campaign where they live streamed going into the game with a character that looked like Wendy, basically. Right. And they, I believe, destroyed a Dur Burger.
Okay. I'm not. We're all looking at Sean behind the camera because I don't know anything about Fortnite.
Yes, but they
nailed it, guys.
They were showing that they have the most fresh beef, basically.
Right. So
through this game, and it was very creative.
So so we'll do a reverse segue then. So that's an example of one of the great standout campaigns at Cannes this year. What were some others?
It was. So some other ones, just keeping with the fast food theme, was the McDonald's McCoin campaign, and that was they did that with Golan Chicago, which came up with the idea of introducing a food-backed currency called the McCoin. And that campaign lifted McDonald's global sales by 6%.
So that's a lot of payments being introduced this week between that a can and the Facebook Libra thing
Yes.
and all of that.
Yeah.
So
And another really interesting one was the Whopper Detour campaign from Burger King that they did with Allison Broad Marketing and Communications. And that won PR credits for the Grand Prix, 2 gold lions, a silver, and a bronze.
that's a terrific campaign. I think another trade magazine described it as trolling of McDonald's, but kind of fun
Definitely.
trolling, isn't it?
Yeah, Burger King trolls McDonald's quite a bit.
And well, I think.
McDonald's never really, retorts.
Right.
And but yeah, they did that Whopper Detour campaign where it was kind of risky. They told people to go to competitor McDonald's locations to unlock a deal for a penny Whopper using the Burger King app.
Mm-hmm.
And in the first 24 hours, Burger King's app became the top app in Apple's App Store.
It's a really creative campaign, so congratulations
really
to them. Congratulations to
1 million
Allison Broad,
activists.
who won a lot of different awards yesterday for that. So
Yeah.
I should say on Wednesday for that. So yeah, terrific stuff. Maher, you mentioned that some of your team is over at Cannes. What are they working on?
When different UN organizations are actually present and they work with some of the advertisers. A couple of years ago, the Cannes Lions, all the big six at the time, they created something called Common Ground to support the Sustainable Development Goals agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And last year, Cannes Lions itself created a whole new award series called the SDG Cannes Lion Award, which is looking for great campaigns that actually relate to one of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Last year, I was there. I was in Cannes. I was part of the first jury in my personal capacity, not as a director or a UN official, because we cannot be part of those things. And one of my colleagues has agreed to do the same this year, and she's part of the SDG Cannes Lion. It was amazing campaigns. We had 900 submissions last year for the SDG Cannes Lion Award, which was a high number for the first. And the creativity that they come up with, and this is again this beauty of partnership that we have, is that we have the concept, but they have the creativity that can actually go beyond whatever we can reach.
Right. And out of 900, who was the winner?
The Grand Prix went to something called the Palau Pledge last year. The Palau Pledge was a very creative campaign. That Palau is a small island state with a few 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 people that they get multiple number of tourists. So they cannot really police the tourists. So when you arrive, instead of stamping your passport with a typical stamp, it is stamped with a pledge. So you sign that pledge as a tourist coming to the country. I pledge to protect the environment. I pledge not to play with the coral, etc., etc. And it is in different languages. And there's a whole educational campaign that comes with it on the flight, arriving in the school, signs on the beach. And it's amazing. Humans, actually, when you sign a document, you try to be true to your signature. So it was successful. And one of the criteria that we were looking for in the SDG Cannes Lion is a campaign that is not only creative, not only supporting the SDGs, but also that can be scaled up. And that is something that they are working on now to take that to other places and other countries.
That's a fascinating campaign. Okay, Diana, tell us a little bit about some demands the PRSA made this week for the next White House press secretary.
Sure. So the PRSA has asked the White House to choose a replacement for Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who will hold more briefings and build a positive relationship with the press. So as
they have high expectations.
Yes. So she is planning her departure for the end of this month.
Yes.
And the PRSA said that it's an opportunity for Trump to reestablish the all-important traditional role of the press secretary. Routine and frequent press briefings are vital to the role, the group wrote, but were neglected under Sanders.
Maher, do you have any thoughts on this?
I mean, the United Nations the Secretary General has a spokesperson. We have a noon briefing, which is a tradition that takes place every day at noon. We have a press corps that we work with very closely, and of course we need to make sure that their needs and requirements are met. Sometimes I think beyond the month of August we have a hiatus, that there are no briefing or the certain short periods, but the spokesperson predictability of a briefing is key to being able to maintain the relationship with the journalists.
Now, how big is the press corps in New York that attends the briefing every day?
They don't all come to the briefing room. If they know that there's a topic that they want to ask a question, they will probably come because it is webcast. So sometimes they're sitting in their office and they can watch it and then write their stories. But the real crunch for media for us comes in September when we have high-level week. And I know that New Yorkers don't like it because First Avenue is closed,
traffic
conditions get congested. But we receive, or at the time we have anything between 2,000 to 3,000 journalists that are coming. We build a special tent for them in the North Garden and have to create access for them because delegations come, 193 countries are represented plus 2 observers. So they're leaders and they come from those countries to cover their leaders. Mm-hmm. And those numbers are 10 times more than our usual. Mm-hmm.
How much of a challenge do you have in terms of language, where you have so many people speaking so many different languages, just in terms of the media covering you? Mm-hmm. How do you make sure that everything can be translated?
Official meetings are translated automatically because we have interpreters, and when you come to the UN, you will see the interpretation booths. Official documents are translated to 6 official languages, but for us as a department, our main products, yes, are in English, but we also try to ensure that they're translated to as many languages directly from New York. So we have the 6 languages, which I mentioned before, plus we also produce stuff in Portuguese, mm-hmm. Kiswahili, and Hindi. Now, our department has offices around the world. We have 59 active UN information centers. So through them, and their websites and their social media, some of the key messages, key products, they actually translate to probably 80 other languages. And I think if you take the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is the founding document for the UN, is the Charter of the United Nations, which 26 June will be the 74th anniversary of adopting it. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights is available in 500 languages. That is the most translated document on the planet.
That's amazing. Wow. Okay, Diana, bring us up to speed on the last 2 big news stories of this week. That's changes at MSL Group and other changes at McDonald's.
Sure.
We really are fast food themed this week, unintentionally.
We really are. So Danielle
Washkuch.
I'm so sorry, Danielle. She's the U.S. COO at MSL. She left the agency amid a string of departures. She was also EVP of Global Practices and Sectors at MSL.
And we have a familiar face turning up at McDonald's, too.
Oh, yes. So at McDonald's, we have David Tovar. He's now the VP of U.S. Communications, and he's starting the role on July 1st, reporting to Robert Gibbs, EVP and Chief Communications Officer. And along with that, the company has promoted a bunch of other people and within the communications team. But his hire follows the departure of Hano Cabrera, who was the SVP of U.S. Communications for Global Media and PR. Hano left in March, and now McDonald's is kind of changing the structure of the way that the communications team works.
I have to say, they've really developed a powerhouse team over there, haven't they? In Chicago. I mean, you have Robert Gibbs, who was the White House press secretary under Obama, and then you have Michael Gamba, and then you have David Tovar, all of whom have run communications departments at major companies. Yeah, so it's really a powerhouse team.
Yeah, definitely. Tovar, he worked at Walmart for many years, and then he went over to Sprint, and he was the head of communications there most recently. So it will be really exciting to see what he does at McDonald's, and in terms of his role at Sprint being filled, the communications team will now report to Deanne King, who is Chief HR Officer on an interim basis. And Sprint and T-Mobile are in the process of a merger. So if that's finalized, that will
So
that
it
we'll
depends
see
what happens,
with
doesn't
the
it?
comms team and who will head that and how it will look. So.
Excellent. So congrats to David. Congrats to McDonald's for bringing him on. Maher, thanks very much for joining us. That's about all we have time for this week on the PR Week. Diana, thank you for co-hosting, and we hope to see you all again next week.
Thank you.